I guess we're all here for one general topic, right? You want to be able to teach online. So most of this is just coming from my own experience of different kind of tips and tricks that I've learned during this transition that I hope might be helpful to you. So I'm going to go over a couple things about the basic types of formats that you could be using, things that I would recommend when it comes to organization to reduce stress and panic among your students and to also make it slightly easier on you as well. And then give you some notes about things that we need to be realistic with our students on what their access capabilities will be and what their abilities to be able to perform the technology will be. After that, I have a few miscellaneous best practices for you, and then we'll open it up to questions, all right? So let's go ahead and jump right into it. So the formats. I'm sure every single university has given you a wide variety of formats to consider right now, and you're wondering, what are they? What's expected of me? What can I expect of the students? How do I avoid creating multiple versions of this class, like an in-person, a synchronous, and an asynchronous one? And how do you manage all of those things? So I'm going to go through the main three types and kind of tell you the good and bad parts of each of these formats as you're considering how you want to structure your class. All right, so the first one, it's asynchronous. Asynchronous means that students can view the content on their own time. You're going to upload the content to whatever your course shell is, whether it be Blackboard, D2L, Brightspace, Canvas, all the other ones in between. And with this, you try to stay a week or two ahead of the students to make sure that the content's going to be there. You need to prepare some of the course ahead of time. And with this, you can also not require the students to be present for any small window of time. Now, I know that can be really stressful, especially when it comes to different things such as tests. You can't put your test for a 1 hour block on a Wednesday. You have to have it for larger periods of time, maybe open for 2 or 3 days, which kind of makes it so that you have to consider alternate types of assignments. Now, so what's kind of the good of the asynchronous model? Well, we're in a pandemic, right? The best part about the asynchronous model is you're not going to be asked to change your format halfway through the semester as a blended class might or a hybrid class might. What you are setting up right now or what you're structuring is going to be what you have until the end. Another great part is that you can prep your videos and contents weeks ahead of time. So let's say that you know you have a conference coming up, or you know you have a bunch of journal reviews, or you know you have an R&R that you really need to deal with. You can record a lot of your videos ahead of time. You can start setting up the assignments ahead of time and put it up for the students so that it's available once those dates are open. So that's a lot of the good parts about asynchronous, but it's also stressful for people. There's no direct interaction with students. This means it requires a lot of energy from you. With the videos, the ones that do really well in my class are the ones where I'm very excited and peppy and people find that really fun. But that's really difficult to maintain when there's no one to be able to talk to on the other side of the screen. So that's something to consider when you're trying to figure out which form you want to put your class in. It's also difficult to reach out to at-risk students. So if you have students that are marginal, they're the ones that might slip through the cracks, they might have access issues, they might not be keeping up with their work, they might be really struggling with the material. You don't have the visual indicators in a classroom of being able to identify those students. That means you're going to have to do more active monitoring of what the grades are and what people's participation is, and develop routine contact to be able to reach out to these at-risk students. Also with asynchronous, this is the form that has the largest variety of cheating issues. I know my school, not necessarily my class, but my school has figured this out. My friends at other institutions have figured this out during our emergency change in March, is that unfortunately, if you have questions that are provided by a publisher in a multiple choice format, you can go ahead and assume that that answer key, it's going to be online on Chegg. It's going to be online somewhere else. Students are going to be able to get a hold of that material. And if you have your test open for long windows of time, what we've seen in some classes is that one student will go in, write down all the questions or screen capture them very quickly and then send them to everybody else. Well, that's something that you have to address and you have to think about with creativity in your assignments. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that when we come back to it, but let's talk about what the other forms are. So next, let's talk about synchronous. So asynchronous, that's students viewing things on their own time. You can roughly give when tests are due and you can roughly give when they should be done with some material, but they determine when they see their videos. Synchronous, instead, this has a live interaction with students on a video conferencing platform. Now, it could be what we're doing right now on Zoom, where I have two monitors. So I have the one that I'm speaking from with all of my notes, and then I have the one with the grid of all the participants so I can see them. I can see the chat log. They can give me that sort of feedback in a live format, so if they have questions, I can answer them. If they have other information, I can figure this out. So that's something really important to consider for the synchronous course. Now, it's normally at the same time as what your scheduled course would be, but you probably will still have to record these and post them for either 6 students or for students that require closed captioning, because you're not going to be able to do that in a live setting, even though they are trying it out with Zoom, but I don't really trust it very much. Now, synchronous, everybody just thinks it's that you're lecturing to a big empty hall and everybody's going to turn off their cameras and not listen to you, but that's not all it has to be. For example, tomorrow we're going to have breakout rooms. You can break your class into smaller groups for activities. You can break them into discussion groups. With most web conferencing apps right now, you can go ahead and prep a few questions ahead of time so that I just go over here, I click one button, and then everybody can have a question that goes to their computer that they have to answer, whether it be a multiple choice one or it has some sort of fill in the blank on, did you enjoy this activity, or what, how would we figure out this equation? So you can have this live questioning for students, and that means that you have a lot of flexibility with the way that you can do quizzes and the way that you're able to do different sorts of assignments in a synchronous format. Now, there's good parts to this, right? You can have live interactions with students. That's one of the best parts, because we all miss the classroom. Going online is difficult. It's fun. There's a bunch of new things that you can try. You're opening yourself up to a whole new world, but you miss that live interaction of being able to walk around a classroom and ask for feedback. And this is the best that can be provided in an online setting. It also gives you the ability to be able to gauge interest and elicit student understanding in real time. You can look over and see, oh, people look confused. Or, I asked this question and no one was able to answer it. I probably should go back over into this material. And with good equipment, you can make this feel similar to a classroom environment. But there's some bad parts too. Productivity diminishes with the number of students. If you have less than 15 students, you can have really good one-on-one discussions. You can have really great debates and things like that. If you have up to about 40, you can still keep the mics on and allow people to just ask questions when they need to be able to ask questions, and you can break them into small groups fairly easily. But once you get over about 40 to 45 students, it starts to feel more like a web conference where you just have one person talking at you, because it's very difficult to interact with all the students individually. So this is one great thing that you can bring to your department if they're saying, oh, well, if you're online, we can just raise your course cap. Well, productivity and your ability to have this interaction with students for this live format really diminishes with the amount of students that you do have in the virtual room, much like you would in a real classroom. Also, one of the bad parts is you have to be the presenter and the tech guru, right? Because I know some people, they want their slides, they think that's great, but they don't want to also have to look at the chat box and make sure that you're seeing who's coming into the classroom and approve people coming in and approve the people coming out. It might be reasonable to ask for assistance, whether it be volunteer or not, but you have to be the presenter and the tech guru in a synchronous form classroom. Now, the last one that I'm going to talk about is kind of the blended or high flex model. This goes by a lot of different names and a lot of different institutions, so I'm going to kind of wrap them all together. Blended and high flex means that you provide both online instruction, so there's still going to be videos that you're giving to people with all the theoretical material, the background, but you also have some elements of a traditional place-based classroom method. So this could be many different formats. It could be that you teach online one day a week and you teach in person the other day. It could be that you rotate in half of your class. So half your class is here on day A and half of your class is here on day B, and whatever day they're not here, they have to do an online activity. It could be teaching majority online. It could be simulcasting for your classroom. Simulcasting is its own thing. This means that you're sitting in your classroom, you have a few students within the classroom that you're teaching, but that other students can log in and view the class online in real time. That has its own technical difficulties with it that I'm going to talk about a little separately. But what are some of the great part about blended and high flex? Well, students can learn the theory by video, right? That means that they can sit at home on their own time, whether it be synchronous or asynchronous, and they can figure out a lot of the theoretical material of this class and which means that since they've already done this background, and you can ensure they've done this background, for the few times that they are in class, you can focus on having discussion. You can focus on having live assignments right there. The blended and high flex classrooms also give you the availability to have low volume classrooms to be able to have safer social distancing. If you only have half of your class in each day, that means you have half the number of students you have to worry about in a very close quarters. It also helps so that you can break your large sections into smaller groups so that you can have more of that interpersonal interaction that you would expect from a small classroom from even a large class. Now, unfortunately, with the blended and high flex models, you do end up having to prepare two different methods of instruction. You have to be prepared to both teach in person and to teach online, which means you need to, from day one, have a schedule, have a plan, know what you're going to have in an online format and what you're going to have in an in-person format. And unfortunately, students become very easily confused with this. Oh, what's in person? What's not in person? What do I have to do online? So you need to have a very well-developed schedule that you give them day one. Now, I'm going to talk to you a little bit later about how to develop these schedules. But with the blended and high flex, what I recommend is that you have a modular system. So this means that you have different modules of your course that can be changed, right? That they can go in different orders. So that if I have one half of the class on day A, they can take the other portion of the class on day B. And then I can have my day B students take the other portion of the class on day A. That we can swap the order of this information. We call this a modular approach. So if that's what people are saying to you, that's what they mean. Now with simulcasting, you instead need to sit at the front of your room, and you need to be able to lecture to people that are there while also taking information from students that might be viewing in an online format. Now, that's not as scary as it sounds. It could be as simple as what we're doing right now with a Zoom lecture, where you are just live casting your entire classroom, and then you need to have maybe a large screen where you have the chat pulled up, expanded as high or as far as you can, and you keep an eye on that chat throughout the time so that you can respond to anything that you have coming in. That means that you're not going to be able to walk around the entire classroom. You might have to stay close to your board, but you can be able to do it without it being a large tech problem. All right, so now that we've talked about kind of these different formats, how should you really organize your course? So it does not matter if you have the most innovative course on earth if your students cannot navigate through it. So you can have the coolest course content, you can have the best class lectures, but if your students can't figure out how to get to them on Blackboard, it's not going to be worth anything, right? So let's talk about what your course shell should really look like. So right on the left, I have my toolbar. Every single course shell, whether it be on Canvas, Blackboard, D2L, Brightspace, whatever you're using, it will have some option for a toolbar. Make your toolbar, or the settings for your toolbar, so that students can see it at all times, and either put it on like the left or top of your screen. I prefer the left because it's a little bit easier for students to navigate. Now, what I would recommend doing is record a short 3 or 4 minute video. You just go into Zoom, share screen, have a little picture of yourself in the corner, and just kind of talk through it. Spend about 3 minutes showing students how to navigate through this. It'll save you a lot of headaches later, especially because if you have any emails that come in saying, oh my gosh, Professor such and such, I can't find my assignment. You'll already have a video that you can link them to that will show them how to navigate the basics of maybe getting to the part 1 course content or the test or the discussion boards. And if you do develop this video, you need to have it in 2 different places because not all students navigate the same. One needs to be on your landing page. So when they first get into your class, they're going to go to probably the announcements or whatever the landing page looks like. Make sure it's there in a prominent location for the first few weeks of class. You also need to have it so that they can reference it anytime in your About the Course section. I would recommend having an About the Course section that explains what you expect from your asynchronous, synchronous, or blended course so that on day 1 they know what is expected of them and there's not going to be anything thrown that's out of left field for them. Now, your goal with your course shell is to minimize the number of clicks that they need to make because each extra click that you ask students to make introduces another possibility of error and another place where they can get lost. So you kind of need to treat it like a tree. Let me show you what that looks like. So we have our landing page right here. Okay, that's great. They go to Principles of Micro or Public Economics, or I mean, I am an economist. I'm sure that there's many other things in many other fields that they could be going to. Now, I already discussed we should have our toolbar already going. It should be on the left part of your screen using the settings. or wherever you decide to put it. Well, if the toolbar is already there, then we don't even have to worry about that click. So what should they be seeing at that point? Well, I recommend breaking your course into major sections and have these sections be reflective of where the tests are going to be. So for section 1, I might have chapters 1, 2, and 3. And for section 2, I might have chapters 4, 5, and 6. And because they'll know, oh, I haven't taken the first exam, I'm in section 1. Or, oh, we're in between exam 1 and 2, I'm in section 2. This gives them their first click. Now after that, they might have what chapter that they're going to. That's going to be their second click. They're going to have to make a selection between that. From there, you can have, okay, chapter 1, here's all your stuff for chapter 1. Here's your textbook reading, here's your video, here's your link to the assignment, and that can be it. Notice in this example that I've made, I have textbook reading, video 1, video 2. I could have had a further folder for them to click on that has all the videos in one place, but I find that almost unnecessary because it's introducing another click. For every click that you have, you're going to have students that get lost, right? So having it where it's like, boom, 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 here's my list of everything that I need so that they can start to work through it piece by piece, puts it right there for a digestible format while still making it easy to navigate for the students. Because like I said, it does not matter if you have the best content on earth if students cannot navigate through your content. So that's something really important to think about, is how you set up your course shell, because it will save you so many headaches. Now, let's talk about what your videos look like, because in every single online course, you're probably going to have a couple different components. You're probably going to have textbook reading from your e-textbook. You're probably going to have an assignment or discussion board post or some sort of news article that you expect them to read. But part of what you're going to have is the actual lecturing, which is going to be the video that you're going to present to students. Now, with these videos, you do not have to have a movie level quality video. You know, students just want to hear your voice and they want to see your face and they want to feel like this is some sort of engaging thing as opposed to just reading PowerPoints. So you don't have to worry about movie level quality. On that, I would recommend worrying about lighting though. So typically in this room, this is my basement, I have 2 little portholes, and if it's sunny out as opposed to raining like it is today, my face becomes completely shadowed. Let me go ahead and give you an example. Here's like my little funnit for my $8 knockoff ring light off Amazon. No light, difficult to see me. Light, really easy to see me. Students, they need to be able to see your face, especially if you have students that may be hard of hearing or have other sort of ADA compliance things. They need to be able to see your lips moving. So if you buy a cheap $8 ring light, you put it up with a command strip Velcro piece like I did, like there you go. Now you have good lighting for all of your videos. You don't have to worry about the other things. And you can avoid having the shadow face and instead having something that's a little bit brighter for students to be able to see. So don't worry about having movie level quality, but do worry about lighting, okay? Now, let's say that you're terrified of making videos. You've never taught online before, you love the classroom, you don't want to learn new things. Well, I guarantee you've had to learn a little bit about conference apps the past couple months, right? You probably have your department meetings on Zoom. You might have them on WebEx or Teams. Any of these you can go into. You can have a room just for yourself. Now, when you're in that room by yourself, you can go ahead and share screen, move your picture of your head down to the corner so that they're able to see your face as well than just the lecture material. And then just press record. You can make your videos like that. Now you can do much more fancy things if you want. You can do video editing, you can do everything else, but that's the basic way to be able to get a video for your course. Now, when you're making these videos, I have a couple recommendations. Students' attention span, they're kind of short, right? Even in class, you might have them trailing off or not paying attention 30 or 40 minutes into a lecture. Online, that becomes so much worse because they don't have the visual parts to keep their attention. They don't have the space and environment to force their attention to be on the lecture. They have distractions everywhere. So you need to think about that and have short online videos. So maybe break what is your normal hour-and-a-half lecture into maybe 10 or 15 minutes per topic. Break it up into smaller, more digestible pieces, and then give them all of those videos for that chapter or that assignment. It turns out students are much happier in those formats. Across the board, every survey that different schools have done, Okay, most surveys that different schools have done have found that students are much more likely to complete all the videos, and they're much more likely to stay awake and pay attention to all the videos when they are broken up into smaller parts. Now, the great part about recording your lectures is that you can give examples for students. I'm in economics, where we do happen to have math. I'm sure many of the other fields also have other things that require a lot of concrete problem solving, where you might have to walk the students through the pieces over time. Okay, sorry, Angel, I got your thing. So when you have these videos, you might want to consider making example problems. So maybe a 5-minute video of, okay, here's a quantitative exercise. Let me run through it step by step so that students can re-watch that video. So you don't have to explain the same questions to them over and over again. You can actually make videos that they would be able to follow the different format for. Okay, so that's talking a little bit about your videos. Let's go ahead and talk about what your assignments might look like. Now, I kind of mentioned this earlier when I was talking about asynchronous courses. There is a cheating problem, right? Our students are smart, they're often tech savvy. If there is any sort of material that your publisher has given to you, so for example, a question bank, discussion questions, multiple choice questions, they're somewhere online. They probably exist on Chegg. If your students have not directly put them online, students at other universities have put them online. So this means that you need to, and this is going to suck, I know, because everybody just wants to use the publisher material sometimes when we're trying to cut down on our amount of time for course prep, but we need to be creative with assessment of student learning, right? We need to start thinking about other formats that we can put assignments into that might reduce this cheating prevalence, but also challenge them in different ways. Give them different ways to be able to think about problems. So let's think about some of your assessment possibilities that you could do. For example, discussion board conversations. In an asynchronous course, you don't have that live one-on-one feedback. You can't break your students into smaller sections. So you might instead want to have different discussion boards set up where they in small groups might have to discuss a concept or topic among themselves. You can, and I'm just going to spitball some ideas for you, you can have different sort of policy briefs where maybe they look at a policy or they look at a law and they have to evaluate it and write a page or two on it. Maybe they can have short answers, or they could design a brochure. Like I could be saying, hey, they want to put rent controls in this town. Can you show me what that's going to look like? Can you make a nice brochure of information that you would give to someone that you want to describe this idea on? Maybe you could facilitate debates or review a newspaper article or create a case study. Any of these things that you create make a space so that students are challenged where they have to actually interact with the material and contribute their own pieces to it without having to just copy and paste answers that they find online. For example, like I have things at the end of this: board games, murder mystery, online escape rooms. I actually have online escape rooms for my students. I just took pictures of our normal classrooms where I have different econ problems that they have to solve to be able to move on to the next part, and it's in a Google Doc. Like something simple like that makes it challenging and interactive for students, which can be really important, especially because they're losing a lot of that interpersonal connection that you have in a one-on-one environment. So there's lots of things you can do. I would challenge everyone that I know people don't want to make big changes, but try one new thing. Try one new thing that scares you. Step out of that bubble and try a different type of assessment for student learning. You know, you might find that you like it, and you might find that it's something that you can continue in later semesters, or you hate it and you just don't do that again. So now that we've talked a little bit about the organization of how you can structure your course, let's be realistic about students, okay? Your students may not have the access or the aptitude to online content that you were envisioning. During our switch to emergency remote teaching, back it feels like a lifetime ago, but it was really just March, I all of a sudden had students who did not have internet access at home. They did not have a computer. They only were trying to work on a broken like iPhone 6 the entire time. So I had to start thinking, what am I going to do for those situations? And maybe you don't need to do everything that I did. I started making DVDs of the lectures and mailing them to students. That might be a little bit much, but you do need to think about maybe students that are using lots of different devices, right? So students aren't always going to have a laptop and a well-functioning laptop to be able to review your material. They instead might have a tablet, they might have a phone. I had one student who was watching lectures on YouTube from a PlayStation and then just writing down the answers to homework and mailing it into me. There might be lots of different devices that you need to worry about formatting for. So let me talk to you about a couple pro tips on how to easily format for different devices. So first, and this one's going to be up to your university policies because every university is a little different, but consider hosting copies of your lecture on YouTube. You can have it as a private YouTube where only people who have the link can view it. If you're worried about other people getting access to your material, you can do it that way and just provide that link to your students. But this is a way that they can easily view this content on lots of different devices without you personally having to format that video. So you're not going to have to change the format to work on every space. Instead, if it's on YouTube, they can pull it up on their phone. They can pull it up on their PlayStation. They can pull it up on their Fire Stick TV. They have lots of different options. One of the other great parts is that YouTube goes ahead and it does make some of those closed captions for you. Now, if you have closed captions that you like or that you make yourself, maybe you use TextSmith Relay, that's one of my favorites, you can upload them to YouTube or you can have it designed themselves. Now, you are going to have to read through it to make sure that it makes sense because every now and then, especially with larger words or names, it might make mistakes. So you're going to have to go in and just make sure that it all logically makes sense. But that will make it so that you can have access for students because you don't know when you might have deaf students. Oh yeah, I can put a link to the captioning app, no problem. You might have deaf students or you might have students that their computers just don't have good speakers. I cannot tell you how many students I have met where their just speakers on their laptop don't work, or speakers on their phone are terrible, or they have really bad headphones. So it's something that you might want to consider. So another thing you need to do is if you're looking at a picture, so for example, let's say you have a graph on your slide, you need to describe it out loud. Because yet again, you might have students that require to be audio only, or you might have students that are looking on teeny tiny phone screens, or people that are reading the closed captioning that can't necessarily see all the pieces of what this graph is. Well, in those situations, you need to at least have something that indicates to them what we're looking at so that they have some sort of descriptor, because now that we're moving to an online format, they're not forced to see everything on a big board in front of them. It might instead be on a 4-inch phone. So you need to describe the pictures that you're looking at and consider having closed captioning so that you can be ADA compliant. And I will give links to every single bit of this for you so that you're able to help build these course structures for yourself. Another thing that I would recommend is simplify your menus. Right, so I've already mentioned students might not be looking at this on a laptop, but I'm sure you're setting it up on a computer. So you know what the computer looks like. But you need to think about what does this course shell look like on a tablet? What does it look like on a phone? And with that, you might need to use larger font sizes so that students who are operating on smaller devices are still able to view your content or read your content. You need to make sure that your buttons are large enough that they can be pressed on multiple devices. If you're using a pre-built course shell, you might not have control over that, but if you're building one from scratch where you have a lot of inputs to be able to put different things such as buttons, you need to consider if they're large enough that they can be pressed on both a phone and on a laptop. Now, honestly, what I can just recommend is regularly perform mobile and tablet tests. Take your normal course, once you have it set up, pull it up on your phone. See if you can still see everything. Pull it up on your tablet. See if you can still see everything. Doing minor checks like that will save your students so many headaches and keep a lot of the panic with this course material down for them, because, you know, this is just as scary for them as it is for us. So now I've talked about formatting for different devices. Let's talk about your schedule, okay? Because good scheduling can make or break an online course. So it could be that, you know, normally in a classroom setting, you come in, you tell students, all right, we're going to cover this set of chapters. Once we finish out to this point, we're going to have a test. So when we get a little bit closer, I'm going to tell you when the test is. And our homeworks are typically going to be due on Monday. So I'll just give you an assignment that week. And if I give you an assignment that week, it's going to be due on Monday. You can't schedule like that with an online course, unfortunately, because students are starting to become responsible for their own time. And they're going to have their own time management in a way that they haven't had before. So good scheduling is the way that you can make sure that they know exactly when their deadlines are, exactly what is expected of them, and they can start to figure out, okay, I need to watch these videos by this date, or I need to get these assignments done by this date. And it really helps these students. This is especially important if you're doing a blended or high flex model. If you are in the classroom some of the time and teaching online the rest of the time, if the pandemic gets worse, you might have to switch to a fully online course. If you have a really good schedule already built out, this transition from a partially in classroom to a fully online experience becomes a lot easier for students because the schedule can remain the same in both formats. So on day one, there's two important and critical things that you have to provide to your students, right? The first one's going to be your test dates. They need to know what day the test dates are. Give them that day one so that they can write them down. That does mean that you're going to have to plan out your course material around this and make sure that you know those dates, but they're going to need to know it because in an online format, they're dealing with different formats for each of their classes and figuring out how to interact in between them. They also need to know their homework dates. Day one, they need to know how many homework assignments you're going to have during the semester and when they're going to be due. Now, there's some other things that are important to put into the schedule, but they're not absolutely mission critical, such as the dates would be. These can be topics that you're going to be discussing. So, you know, what's in part 1, part 2, part 3 of the course, what chapters are there or what topics are there. Project due dates so that you can have some time where you're going to discuss these projects. Review days, activity days. These are things that are really important to give to students, but they're not as mission critical. Now, I am going to give one really important piece of advice. When you have your test dates and your homework dates, you do need those on your syllabus or whatever you're going to provide to students. Have that in your About the Course folder. But you also need to put them on the calendar on whatever platform you're using. So on Blackboard, put it on the Blackboard calendar. On the Brightspace, put it on the Brightspace calendar. The important reason why you need to do this is because not all students get their information in the same place. Many of them aren't going to go navigate to your individual page to figure out what's due. They're going to press the, oh, here's the calendar where they expect all their assignments are going to be uploaded or all their dates are going to be for each of their classes. They click on that and they say, okay, what's due this week? Or what do I need to do this week? And if your class is not on there or your due dates are not on there, they might slip through the crack, or students may not be able to engage with that. They might not know that it's there, which means that you're not going to have the first priority for your class. They might instead work on other classes. So these are things that you really need to consider is when you have calendars or when you're building schedules, provide them with a schedule on a piece, well, on a piece of paper, maybe a Word document, but also put it into the calendar app within whatever course shell you're using. All right, so now that we've moved on from there, let's talk about just a few miscellaneous best practices, okay? I'm not asking you to reinvent the wheel. You do not have to reinvent the wheel. There are a lot of smart people out there who have developed beautiful pedagogy so that you do not have to. What I just ask you to do is consider maybe trying one new thing to engage students. Instead of just recording your voice over a PowerPoint, maybe decide to have videos and a few other different types of assessments. Instead of just using publisher multiple choice, which has high cheating rates, maybe consider other types of activities that they can do. It doesn't have to be a lot of them, but maybe try just one new thing. And that's kind of what I want to challenge you to do by giving you this information is by having you approach these sort of situations in this way so that you can make this a more engaging activity for students. They're paying thousands of dollars to sit in your course. We need to at least make them feel like they're engaging, even if they can't be in a physical classroom where they can talk to you and other students. So I do have a couple pieces of miscellaneous advice that didn't really fit in anywhere else. So let me go through these. First, I would recommend having an opportunity folder somewhere in your shell or in your course shell. The reason for this is because students, they're going to feel lonely. They're not going to see their friends. They're online is a little bit difficult and challenging for some students. So they're not going to make the connections that they generally would in an in-person environment. So in here, you can have information about the student clubs. The student clubs will probably have different Zoom meetups or alumni panels. You might want to put things about job opportunities. I don't know if you all noticed, but there's not a lot of jobs right now, and students are a little bit worried about what's going to happen when their education finishes. So maybe information about jobs or graduate school, whatever comes to you, can just go into this folder, and it can help them with a starting point. Another thing that you might want to consider is making things visually appealing. I used a lot of words on these slides because I want to be able to give them to you afterwards. But with students, they're not going to have that same sort of reception as faculty would. I enjoy having the words there so I have something to look at, but students can get easily overwhelmed, and they'll spend so much time reading the screen that they won't actually be paying attention to what you say. Minimize on words, probably make things colorful. If you noticed in this, I generally had a purple background for a majority of this presentation. The reason for that is because of eye strain. Students are now going to be looking at screens for 6 to 8 hours a day. That can be really damaging. It can give them headaches and give them fatigue. So one of the things that I do recommend is maybe considering having a darker background with lighter letters so that you can kind of minimize the strain that's going to happen on students, and so it'll be easier for them to look at or be able to watch the entire time. Also, don't trust the auto closed captioning. So if you put it on you put your video lecture on YouTube to get your closed captioning, you put it in some sort of other device, it'll normally spit you out kind of what the auto-generated closed captioning is, but it's not going to have the names right. It's not going to have a lot of the theories right. And if you have a student that's dependent on closed captioning for an online environment, which many of them are, you need to make sure that those make sense. It's going to be a pain. It's going to take 30 minutes of your day to go read through the lecture to make sure that everything makes sense. But I would recommend spending that time so that you're able to help out these students and make this an environment that they can be most successful in. Also, like I said earlier, post your deadlines in both the course shell and on the course calendar. That's crucial because some of them are going to go to your course shell to find their assignments. Some of them are going to go to the calendar to find the assignments. If you have them on both, you're not going to have a just rain of emails coming in halfway through the semester saying, oh my gosh, I got a 0. I didn't even know about this assignment. You can avoid that before it even starts. One last thing I want to give as a piece of advice is just be patient with your students. Many of them are taking online classes for the first time. They're scared and I'm going to say incorrectly, they believe that we have all the answers and we know what we're doing and that we're in control of the situation, when honestly, many of us aren't. This is a learning curve for everyone. So be patient with students. It's just as hard for them as it is for you.